In an isolated religious village in the year 1780, a woman named Maggie decides to liberate herself by poisoning her abusive husband's drink. At the table are her older stepson, David, and her younger son, Sam. Both are apprehensive about the possibility of the plan failing until the man arrives and settles in. He drinks the tea unsuspecting, while the youngest shows signs of nervousness. Noticing this, Maggie tells her husband that they need to return to work, and he agrees. On the way to the fields, he starts to feel ill and soon falls dead, under her watchful gaze. Meanwhile, in the village, Henry, Maggie's father, is a strict pastor and religious leader who conducts a cult for the villagers. She drags her husband's body to a secluded spot and decides to mutilate it to make his death look like an accident. Maggie drinks a bit of alcohol to gain courage and with an axe severs the man's hand. By committing the act, she breaks religious rules and awakens a pagan creature that inhabits the forest. Next, Maggie hears the growl of the monster and reaches out to touch it. The pastor continues the cult when something catches his attention and makes him fall silent. Maggie appears covered in blood, leaving everyone terrified, including her father. The next day, Henry seeks out his disciple, a young man named John, and says he needs to talk. He confesses he has been uneasy since the incident with his daughter. John comments that Maggie and the boys have distanced themselves since the accident. The pastor states he needs to bring them back, as he wants them to return to the cult and work in the fields. Henry and John then set off together to find the family. The family returns from an outing when they notice the two watching from above. Henry gets straight to the point and says he hasn't seen them working in days, let alone at Sunday service. Maggie claims she is not well, and her father quickly responds that his prayers are precisely to comfort her. Henry says he understands his daughter's feelings. After all, she lost her husband and the father of her children, but he reminds her that as members of the community, everyone needs to fulfill their role, adding that he has been patient long enough. Maggie assures him that they won't miss the next workday, and Henry replies that he will wait eagerly. The family then leaves the area, while the pastor asks John to keep an eye on them. While working in the fields, Andrea becomes annoyed with John, who is just observing, and says he lives alone with the pastor and needs to get married soon, as it's strange. David responds that not everyone thinks that way, and Andrea asserts that sometimes personal desires come second, and one must fulfill their duties. She asks why he isn't in the field with the other men. Maggie interrupts her, questioning whether she doesn't see their situation, and Andrea retorts that Howard would be ashamed now. When Andrea praises Howard as a good father and husband, Maggie, furious, reminds her that he used to beat the children and that she saw them hurt week after week without saying anything. David tries to contain her, saying that's enough, but Maggie continues. Andrea responds that it is not right to speak of the dead, as they cannot defend themselves, and Maggie retorts by asking if they can talk about the living. Andrea questions what Maggie means, and she asserts that God cannot protect them or save them. They need to act on their own. At this moment, Ursula, Andrea's daughter, has memories of her father and collapses on the ground convulsing. Frustrated, Maggie heads home with David, while Andrea accuses her of causing that. Later, Andrea brings her husband to confront Maggie. The man warns that he wants her away from the family. Maggie asks if he really needs that knife to talk to a woman. He responds that she fools no one with that, and reveals that Howard did not die by accident, saying he has never met anyone who held an axe so well. Maggie merely observes in silence, and the man quickly spits in her face. At that moment, the creature reacts in some way. Irritated, he says he doesn't care whose daughter she is and orders her to stay away. Maggie says she felt the daughter's suffering, and she knows what he did. She warns him that he should think twice before threatening her again. Later, Maggie is alone with her stepson, and they share an intimate moment. During dinner with the pastor, John reports the incident, and Henry says he is already aware, for Andrea came to him accusing her daughter of witchcraft and saying she now refuses to work in the fields. Henry comments that Andrea is a zealous fool, but has influence in the community. John agrees, asking for patience. The pastor admits he no longer knows what to do with his daughter, who believes she can abandon everything without consequences. John reminds him that they are still in mourning and need time, but Henry asserts that her mourning is strange and that Maggie needs a new husband to guide her, asking John to prepare himself. The man seems uncomfortable with the conversation, but does not contradict him, and says he will do whatever he asks. Later, at Andrea's house, her husband Fred goes to their daughter's room to try something again. However, the girl is filled with terror, and Fred turns around, being quickly attacked by the creature and brutally killed, while blood splatters on the daughter. The next day, Andrea storms off to find Maggie, but sees the pastor entering the forest. Henry meets his daughter and questions her about the fight. Maggie responds with a curse, and Henry grabs her by the neck, demanding manners. Andrea watches everything in disbelief. Before leaving the place, Maggie reminds him that her father knew what kind of monster Howard was and still married her off to him. Before leaving, she warns him that the days of playing God are numbered. Later, John visits David, as the pastor requested, and invites him to fetch a lamb for slaughter. David agrees, and the two begin to walk. On the way, John asks how he is feeling, and David responds that he is well. John also asks about Sam, and the young man says he is confused, as his father was always kind to him but hated him. John asks if he can convince Maggie to return to work, and David, irritated, asks if he never gets tired of being the pastor's errand boy. John responds that everything is for the good of all, as they need the harvest to survive. David questions whether the pastor truly wants the food or just everyone's obedience. John asks if that makes a difference when everyone is starving, and speaks of God's word. Tired, David says he has heard all that. Approaching, he states that not everyone is as cruel as his father. With tears in his eyes, John hugs him and says he has missed him, and David replies that he has too. We discover that the two are in love, but religion prevents them from being together. John comments that Henry wants him to marry Maggie, but admits he loves him and cannot do it. David says he understands his feelings, and then touches John's neck with a bit of cursed earth from the forest, marking him and creating a connection with the beast. Later, John prepares to sleep and prays to God to protect David. As he falls asleep, he has a nightmare. He sees Maggie and David, and finally realizes the pagan creature watching him. David takes him to Maggie, who questions if he wants to live a lie for the rest of his life, or if he will help reveal the truth. John resists the accusation and calls her a sinner. Maggie laughs and says he is right, but she cannot deny the presence of that creature before him. In the morning, John wakes up startled and quickly draws the creature he saw in his dreams, and he is terrified. Maggie is chopping wood at her house when she notices some armed villagers staring at her. She quickly calls for David, but soon hears his voice, and when she turns around, discovers he has been captured by Andrea. Sam quickly runs to warn his grandfather. The villagers prepare to hang her for witchcraft, and David tries to help her but is held by the townsfolk. Maggie begins to be hanged, but at that moment, Henry arrives. The villagers quickly release her, and he approaches Andrea, delivering a punch. He asks what they think they are doing, and Andrea replies that she is just doing what needs to be done. The pastor asks what she is talking about, and she comments that her husband was murdered and that Maggie killed him. She says she followed her yesterday and saw Maggie having fun with a pagan creature. In a flashback, we see that Ursula had asked God for her father's death, while Andrea cries upon seeing him lifeless. However, she lies about where her husband was killed, saying he is at the back of the house, and claims her daughter saw everything and can prove it, that the beast tore him to pieces. Andrea asks if he doesn't see that her daughter is sinking into the arts of darkness. She adds that Maggie is using the creature to kill them as a sacrifice. Everyone begins accusing Maggie of witchcraft, and Andrea states that she wishes for her to die. That way they would be rid of the beast. Henry asserts that she will be kept imprisoned while he investigates all the accusations. Maggie tries to defend herself, but Henry tells her to be quiet and asks everyone to return to work. Meanwhile, we see more of that black liquid spreading through the forest, with the creature in the background. Later, Henry goes to the cell and shows the drawing John made, questioning what it is and commenting on how Fred was brutally killed. Maggie starts to smile and says that perhaps the beast has bad taste in dirty men. Alarmed, Henry asks what she did, but she just laughs maniacally. John waits outside and asks if the creature is real. Henry, worried, responds that he doesn't know, but the villagers believe it, and they need to act, or they will lose everything, commenting that they are on the brink of a precipice. John says he understands and asks what they will do. Henry orders that Maggie be tied up in public, and so it is done. The villagers take her, tie her to a plow, and pelt her with various tomatoes. Meanwhile, Henry prefers to lock his grandson Sam in a basement so he does not witness the scene. Everyone is attacking the woman except Ursula, who is grateful to have been spared. At this moment, the pastor tells everyone to be quiet and declares that his daughter and stepson are followers of evil and that they murdered Fred with the help of the creature of darkness. He claims that from today on, Maggie is no longer his daughter, and asks everyone to arm themselves and prepare for winter, assuring that they will show that evil does not prevail in that place. Before walking away, Henry says that Maggie will stay there until the day of her execution. In the meantime, the monster watches from a distance and continues to spread its influence. Later, John encounters the pastor and comments that he has never seen the villagers work so hard. Henry says they are happy because they got exactly what they wanted. John asks again if he believes the creature is real, and Henry only responds that it has become useful. The pastor orders John to call Andrea and free David, as it is time to resolve the situation. Andrea finds Ursula and asks if that was fair, and the girl confirms, saying her father had been acting that way for some time. Andrea, deeply shaken, bursts into tears. John lies to David, saying that Maggie wants to meet him in the forest, and reveals that the young man knows the meeting place. The young man thanks him and sets off, while John remains thoughtful, torn between love for David and loyalty to Henry. The pastor, along with the villagers, is after Maggie in the forest and finds David thrown on the ground. Henry asks what he is doing, and David responds that he just wants to see Maggie one last time. Henry orders him to turn around, and as he does, the pastor realizes that David is completely out of his mind. Andrea approaches and says that Maggie is also sick. Henry asks if she remembers the place where she found the creature, and she reveals exactly where it is. However, David starts laughing maniacally, claiming that no one can do anything, for they cannot harm the creature. Henry then reveals his true plans by killing Andrea, and then quickly turns to David and kills him. John becomes desperate, but Henry approaches and explains the plan. The beast attacked and killed Andrea, and he acted swiftly to cut her, but the creature fled into the darkness. David, taken by violence, tries to attack him, but John manages to save him. Then Henry makes a cut on himself and then on John, and in a firm tone, asks him to confirm the story. The two walk to Maggie to free her. The next day, Henry takes his daughter to a safe place. She wakes up and pleads with him not to hurt David, but he avoids the question and walks away. A few hours later, she wakes up again and heads for the door, but discovers it is locked. She begins to search the place, and as she approaches the wall, she hears whispers. Scared, she recoils and feels something strange. Turning around, she sees David all disfigured, asking for help. Soon she realizes it was all a nightmare, and wakes up, finding John staring at her. She asks where David is, but he ignores her and says he is sick. She comments that it might have been something in the soil or the mud, and she says she is sorry, but he responds that she doesn't care about him. Maggie says she just tried to free him and tries to comfort him, but John begins to cry, which concerns her. She asks what happened, and he replies that it is all her fault for diverting him. Furious, he throws her against the wall, causing her to hit her head, and she falls unconscious in his arms. He starts to apologize, but Maggie reveals that it was all just an act and hits him on the head with a blow. Seizing the opportunity, she flees into the forest in search of the creature, but ends up finding David wandering around. As she approaches, she sees that it is the same figure from the dream and starts to follow him. Soon, she finds David's real body, completely mutilated, with a sign around his neck. She hugs him and cries, mourning his death. At that moment, John wakes up and starts searching for her in a rage. Maggie continues wandering through the forest until she encounters the beast again, which stares at her fiercely. John continues to pursue her, but she appears from behind, and with a swift blow cuts his throat. Maggie appears possessed, and Henry shows up, striking her in the head. Furious, he remembers that his wife died giving birth to her, and tries to kill her, but is stopped by the creature, which pierces his heart with its claws. Henry falls quickly to the ground, lifeless. Maggie tells him he will not see his mother anymore, as she is going to hell. Still, she asserts that she will always keep an eye on him, wherever he is. And thus the film ends.